Darren, what's up?
Actually, 30 seconds early.
Well, if you're on time, you're late.
Exactly.
Are we playing, is that Ms. Pac-Man?
That's an arcade
Wow.
show. I would picture you have two of them in your place. You seem like a Pac-Man guy.
I wish. I've moved so much over the last 10 years that moving something that big would be just a giant, giant headache.
Do I have it correct? Pickering to Vancouver to Ontario to maybe Cleveland to Miami, now to LA?
Wow. And you did that off the top of your head? Wow.
No, trivia people do trivia things, you know?
Yes, that's everywhere I've worked. I was in Cincinnati for 9 months between Miami and here. My girlfriend, it's her hometown, so I was there. I didn't really need a home base, so I was just like, yeah, I'll come live with you. And then I'm like, you know what? It's not a lot of jobs for a TV host in Cincinnati, so I'm gonna move to LA now.
Right. It's amazing to me, your career. Can I compliment you? I don't know if you're uncomfortable with compliments here.
Oh, sure. Oh, please.
So Chris Van Vliet is one of those people that when you first see him do the interviews, and they're these great interviews, you first go, what's up with that guy? There's got to be this dark side to him. Your inner Mark Maron kicks in and you go, there's something he's not telling us here. And then the more interviews you see, you go, he either hides this darkness better than anyone on the planet, or nope, he's a good dude. He doesn't have that edge. Like, have you always been this calm and organized? Because, here's the actual question. You put up a reading list a couple days ago and you had that great Mark Manson book on there. Have you always been this relaxed, pleasant human being, or is there initially this angry guy?
Oh, well, thank you. That's a very kind compliment. Yeah, I mean, I'm still working on it every single day, so it's very kind of you to say that. I think that I'm just trying to improve on being the best version of myself every day, and I would hope that we're all trying to work on being the best versions of ourselves every single day. But I remember driving to my job in Toronto, what was this, 12 years ago, and listening to Tony Robbins videos or audio, his audio books, like books on tape, but like I had like the pirated version of it. So don't tell Tony this, but I would go on BitTorrent. I would go on BitTorrent and like get the Tony Robbins audiobook and then listen to it in my car. I just know that we all have the same capabilities in ourselves. And it's just a matter of who put in the work to get to where they want to go, who dreamed big enough. And I don't, at the end of my life, want to look back and go, really should have gone for it. So I'm going for it, man. And I'm going for it in a lot of different ways. And you listed all the places that I've moved. And I think a lot of people are scared to move, 20 minutes away. And here I am 3 time zones away again.
Totally. It must be one of those things where at the beginning you're going like, what am I doing with my life? But then at a certain point it had to have clicked and you went, there's nothing else that I want to be doing other than right now. Do I have that correct at least?
Yeah. So I had an epiphany in my senior year of college. So I went to college in Waterloo, Ontario, about an hour and 15 minutes from my hometown. I went to Wilfrid Laurier University. So if you're ever in Canada, he is the guy on the $5 bill. And I loved school, and I was having the best time living with 4 of my best friends. Of course, drinking many beers as one does in college. And I woke up one morning in my senior year and it just hit me. Like, when we graduate this year, it's over. It's not, do I feel like going to class? It's not, where are we drinking tonight? It's, you're going to go to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever your hours happen to be for the next 40 to 50 years of your life. And it was in that exact moment that I went, I don't want to hate my job because I'm going to be doing it for most of the rest of my life. So I reached out to every radio station in town, every TV station in my college town, and just basically said, look, I'm passionate about broadcasting. This has always been my goal and my dream in life. And I want to chase after this. And if it doesn't happen, at least I can say when I was 21, I tried my damn hardest. And I was really fortunate that I was a volunteer at a radio station. They brought me in on the street team. I handed out stuff at different events.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And one of them was a WWE event. It was so cool, like handing out 91.5 The Beat stickers at a WWE house show. One TV station was run completely by volunteers. So I was like VTR and I was audio, floor directing, camera guy. And then one radio station said, well, we don't take on volunteers, but how would you like a job? And I said, oh my gosh, yes. So I got my first job in the industry as a board operator at AM 570 News, like literally running the soundboard for all these different news shows and talk shows. And then when my shift was over, I'd go into the recording booth and start to make demo reels for myself. So that was where I decided, like, I want to have a clear path of, I want to go and do this thing for a living.
I don't think that the large majority, well, that's redundant, large majority. I don't think a large percentage of people that watch your videos realize that you're a multiple Emmy Award-winning broadcaster. In other words, they kind of go, this guy's interviewing another wrestler this week, and they don't realize your amazing reel per se until maybe they dig into the 20th interview, and then they go, who is this guy? Wikipedia. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's funny, like when you look at my Wikipedia, like the wrestling stuff's just like a little footnote there and like all the other stuff I've done.
Yeah.
Look, I'm really proud of what I've been able to accomplish thus far in my career. I know that there's still many more years ahead of me in my career. But look, you know, we live in this world now, this internet world of like things being really, really niche. You know, and with that said, I completely understand that the wrestling world is like hyper niche, and within the wrestling world people might be aware of, you know, the interviews I've done, but you take just like half a step outside of that world and people have no idea not only who I am, but like no idea any of the people I've ever interviewed. So It's always such a nice surprise when someone is a wrestling fan and maybe has watched some of my videos and they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you've interviewed Denzel Washington and Tom Cruise and Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway. And, you know, I could keep dropping names, but I don't know how much time we have.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'll put it to you that way. And it amazes me that there's that facet of your career, but you've managed to cross the threshold where it's not embarrassing to be working in the wrestling field. I will tell everybody I'm a wrestling fan. That's only been maybe the last 5 years where I'm super out about it. Like there's certain things like, don't tell people you're a Kiss fan. Outright, like you have to keep that one close. And that you love hair metal like Dokken and Rat. You don't immediately volunteer that. Like you dip the toe in the water, you go, I like Motley Crue and Poison, and that's acceptable. And then once you start saying, you know, Sleazebees or whatever, then it's a different story. I'm curious when it became okay and acceptable for you to be out about being not only a wrestling fan, but that you interview the wrestlers, because let's face it, a lot of the broadcasting companies, they still look down on wrestling in spite of it being top industry.
Sure. A lot of people in general just look down on wrestling. And it's funny, with all that said, kind of springboarding off of that, when you find someone who's a fellow wrestling fan, it's like that scene in Step Brothers. Like, did we just become best friends? Yep. And it's so funny how like it bonds us together. So for me, I was aware of wrestling in the late 80s, you know, Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man and Slaughter, Coco Beware, all those larger than life characters. I was aware of it. It would be on at my grandparents' house. Not that my grandpa was a huge wrestling fan, but he just loved sports. So if baseball or hockey, being a Toronto guy, wasn't on TV, yeah, sure, wrestling would be on Saturday night. But it was in the late 90s Attitude Era when I really got into wrestling. And it was Austin versus McMahon was the big feud. And when I get into something, I dive all the way into it. So I was not hiding this from anyone. I was like super proud that I was passionate about this thing. And I wanted to like throw this in your face. If you weren't a wrestling fan, I would still shout "it doesn't matter" at you and raise the people's eyebrow and all kinds of so many stupid things. I remember, this is so embarrassing, but I remember I was the vice president of my student council in my final year of high school. And Survivor was like a big show at the time. And we had a Survivor Day. Thursday it was going to be Survivor, like to kick off the new season. It was Survivor Day. So dress up like your favorite Survivor character. And I remember in the student council meeting being like, you know, SmackDown is also on Thursday. And I just feel like if you just single out one TV show, that's not fair to the other TV shows. So I'm going to dress up like a wrestler on Survivor Day. And they're like, sure, Chris, like do whatever you want. I'm like, I'm all about fair treatment. I'm all about fair treatment. So you like your TV show and I will like my TV show. So I was not just a passionate wrestling fan, but definitely an annoying wrestling fan.
Which wrestler did he dress up as?
Triple H. Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
I mean, I didn't like have the blonde wig, but I was wearing the I Am the Game shirt. And I carried around a water bottle and taped one hand fully and then the rest on the other. And there was like spitting water in people's faces. It was, yeah, it's just silly.
Now, I haven't interviewed as many A-listers as you, or while they were A-listers. I usually get them when they're doing their indie projects. Like, I don't get the red carpet junket. I get maybe the black carpet junket or the media roundtable
Right.
call. But it's easy. It's a lot easier to interview top comedians, actors, or musicians than it is wrestlers. It's this nearly impossible thing to break in. And I've had 2 or 3 wrestlers who really put out good word about me, which enabled me to get interviews. And I could tell you one of them was Diamond Dallas Page. I wouldn't be here without DDP. Who is that with you? I would guess that it's Dolph Ziggler.
He's definitely helped me a lot. Like, look, I was really fortunate. I've been really fortunate in my career to work at a TV station where I was an entertainment reporter. Yeah, I've been an entertainment reporter for almost my entire career. So when you're already interviewing A-list actors, comedians, authors, musicians, a wrestler just kind of falls into that mix there. And it was actually me pushing my bosses to be like, hey, can we interview a wrestler? And they're like, yeah, sure, we can do that. That's how it all began. And it wasn't about people putting in a good word for me. It was just like, it was almost like, oh my gosh, like we have a chance to be on TV. Like,
Right.
Not just on TV, but on TV with someone who is familiar with our product. Because unfortunately, a lot of wrestlers go into a local TV station and they're like, oh, so we've got John Cena here, John Cena. John, I see that you have a catchphrase that we cannot see you,
Right.
but I can see you right now. Like that. Those are those are your typical morning news interviews. So when I came in and would ask them, hey, can we have anyone? Give us anyone who's in town, and they would give us someone, and then we'd actually be able to talk about the current product. I think that not only did the wrestlers like it, the company loved it, I loved it, and it was just a great balance for everybody. Dolph Ziggler, has become a great friend. He's always been so kind to me. And when I was living in Cleveland, anytime he was back in town, I would just be like, hey man, want to do an interview? And, that's what it would usually lead to me doing. Yeah. Almost every time we did an interview. And I've now done like 16 interviews with him.
Yeah. It's great to see that you're not afraid of repeating interviews. A lot of people that do interviews have that fear of, if I do it more than once, people don't care or whatever. Whereas you find that you're actually able to apply what you spoke about the last time and expand on that further and go into that micro niche way. That is definitely a compliment at you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for noticing that. I think that it's important to kind of emulate what the best people are doing. I think Tony Robbins says it best. Wow, 2 Tony Robbins references here. Wow. He says success leaves clues. And if we look at, the people who are doing this at the top, Howard Stern and Joe Rogan and even, Oprah and Ellen, they're not afraid to have guests on more than once. It's just make sure you have a whole new set of stuff to talk to them about. So, if I talk to Dolph Ziggler 16 times, we're probably not repeating too many of the same topics. And if we are, like you said, we're expanding on like, hey, a year ago you said this thing. Obviously, it's a very different situation now. What's up?
That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, going on a different wavelength and all that, you put out a tweet a couple of weeks, so maybe it was even a week ago, who knows what time is passing by anymore, that you were thinking of changing the name of your show because the show's not about you. Is that still happening?
I just wanted to throw this idea out there because look, I get in the wrestling world. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but in the wrestling world, wrestling fans might be familiar with who I am. They might not know how to pronounce my name, but they might be familiar with who I am or maybe an interview that I've done at some point in my career. But I've been expanding out and doing, some other different guests. I had Mike O'Hearn, one of the best bodybuilders of all time on. I had Vitor Belfort on. I just recently had UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic on. By the way, he wants a fight with Brock Lesnar. That was such a fascinating conversation, like an actual, like
exclusive.
Yeah. And I just, right before I got on with you, I just found out that I'm going to have Andrew Yang on the show.
Wow. He's
Right. So
headlines right now, to say the least, in the wrestling world.
Right. So I just think that when you approach someone like that and they see an email that says, do you want to be on the Chris Van Vliet show or Chris Van Vliet show or however you want to pronounce it? I think they go, what? But then you look at some of these podcasts that have a broader name, like I'll list off some of my favorite podcasts, like The School of Greatness or On Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's the name of the show with this person. So I thought, what if I made my show the something with Chris Van Vliet? The something's obviously a terrible name. So it's, this is my placeholder here. The placeholder.
I don't know. It might not be
Chris
that
Van
bad.
Vliet.
Something.
But there was a lot of great feedback. And this is the great thing about Twitter is you can put something out, or just social media in general. You can put something out into the world and realize instantly if this is a good idea or a bad idea. And I realized in like 4 minutes that maybe this isn't the best idea. And people were like, look, man, like the show might not be about you, but you are the vehicle to allow these interviews to happen. So don't change anything. So I don't think I'll be changing anything.
I think that it didn't hit me until my 30s that having a last name that's uncommon can actually be a benefit. And I put my last name now on everything, and I watch people struggle, and it's actually kind of great. In your case, I think that people who watched your MJF interview, the way that he says your last name is great. You could have a supercut of people butchering your last name, and actually it could be a great marketing tool.
I get called Chris Van Vliet because of the MJF interview more than anything else. Like I'll go to a wrestling event. Yo, it's Chris Van Vliet. I'm like, yeah, sure. Good enough. I just wish that my ancestors had spelled my last name Vleet. Then there would have been no problems. You've got Fred Van Vliet, who plays for the Raptors,
Of course.
FVV, which I get, people are like, oh, is he your cousin? I'm like, oh, he spells his name differently, and he is much larger than I am. But I just wish that, and my ancestors have been in North America for like a long, 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 long time. On my dad's side, they came over in 1651. So I just wish that if it wasn't the Van Vliets in 1651, maybe it could have been like that son or daughter, in 1670. Maybe their son or daughter in 1694. Like, just wish someone along the way had like spelled it in a more easy to pronounce way.
Van Halen, Vandenberg. There's a lot of great Art Vandelay. I don't know.
Art Vandelay.
Why can't they get your last name right? It really, like I before E, we get it. Your whole childhood, were they butchering it, or is just?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I remember like on the morning announcements. I played basketball and football. I played basketball and volleyball and baseball, and they would like talk about the stats on the morning announcements, and they'd be like, "And with 4 points, Chris Van Vliet." I got my vice principal called me Chris Van Violet. I guess if you transpose the L and the I, yeah.
I don't have the right answer, but I think kind of like what I was saying before, as you get older, your weaknesses become your strengths in that Paul Heyman, ECW kind of way. Like, hey, what are the things that are different about you? Yeah, just do that all the time and nothing else.
Sure. I mean, look, as long as, what's that old phrase? It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, as long as you spell my name right. Just try to pronounce my name right, I guess.
Well, going back to the whole interviewing thing, in the wrestling world, is there anyone you haven't gotten yet that's still alive, that's still on the I hope to get list?
Yeah, like a lot. Yeah, so Vince is at the top of that list. I don't know that he's doing a ton of interviews at all. I don't know that's possible, but I will keep putting that out into the world that I want to have a conversation with Vince McMahon. Not the wrestling promoter, but Vince McMahon, the human. Vince McMahon, the entrepreneur. I want to know what makes him tick. What's the first 30 minutes of his day look like? And whether you like wrestling or not, you have to respect what Vince has built as a businessman. So number one, Vince, Stone Cold Steve Austin, I still haven't had the chance to have like a long interview. I interviewed him briefly when he was promoting was one of his TV shows many years ago.
Island or something.
Yeah. And then The Undertaker, which I think seems really possible. He's been doing a lot of interviews. So I need to get connected with the right person to make an Undertaker interview happen. So those three for sure, but there's still, there's dozens of other interviews I'd love to have.
Sure. It's great to see that you're able to work across party lines. Some people are not allowed to work with this company if they work with that company. At this point in time for you, what percentage is you going after the interviews versus other people just coming to you?
Oh, it's probably 98% me going after people. And of that 98%, it's like 42% don't get back to me. So I'm like, oh, all right. Or I'm like, oh, they didn't get back to me directly, so I'll find another path to get there. This person must know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
Very rarely are people like outright saying, I want to come on your show. And oftentimes the people that are outright saying, like, I want to come on your show is someone that maybe my audience wouldn't be that familiar with. So I'm like, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I just don't know if now's the right time. But then every once in a while, you'll get someone who, like the Vitor Belfort interview, which blew me away. He started following me on Instagram. And then a minute later sent me a DM and he's like, so when am I coming on your show? And I'm like, next Tuesday? Yeah, sure. I'm like, okay, yeah, great. So those are the ones that, blow me away, but those are very, very rare.
You definitely had a lot of people talking with your Austin Aries interview. You broke so many scoops. You made him likable. I mean, he always on purpose kind of carried the reputation that he wasn't easy to work with. And you kind of learned that that's by design, where he's going, now, why would I want that? That kind of thing. Did you know that was a great one while you were doing it, that going into it, you were going to get him to talk about all these unique things that he didn't discuss?
Yeah, that was a really interesting one because it wasn't just going in and doing the interview with him. And I guess I really haven't talked about this. I spent the weekend with Austin Aries. So like I stayed at his house and like he made me vegan meals. Like we hung out. And then when it was finally time to do the interview, we were like, okay, let's set up the camera. So I knew that just hanging out with him, he would have a lot to say. And my worry was that we wouldn't have enough time to do it. And my longest interview at that point was with Enzo, a little over an hour long. Mm-hmm. Now all my interviews are, about an hour long, which is awesome that I've kind of like carved that out. Mm-hmm. So we started the interview and I said to him, my memory card will only give us an hour and 54 minutes. I'm like, that should be plenty of time. And when we got to like the hour and 52-minute mark, I'm like, well, got to wrap this thing up, man. He's like, we got to do a part 2. Like I've barely touched on anything I want to talk about. So I knew that he was talking about a ton of different things he hadn't talked about. And I think we just got to see a side of him that we didn't necessarily know existed. So yeah, I knew that was a good one. It's just funny how sometimes in that moment you can appreciate what's happening as it's happening. And that doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah, every now and then I have one of those, and it just renews my faith in interviewing. It makes me love interviewing. But being that so many people have broken stories through you exclusively, whether or not intentionally, and people have broken character in almost every interview that you've had. At this point in time, are you now able to see what's a work and what's not a work with more ease, or are you just even more confused than ever?
I think we all know in 2020, we all, I think, are pretty aware of what's real and what's not. And thank you for the compliment again. That's very kind of you to say that news has been broken on my show. But look, I'm just trying to have a conversation with people. I've never, ever approached these as shoot interviews. I, in fact, think that term is so stupid. Can you imagine someone going on the Today Show and them being like, we've got a shoot interview today with Denzel Washington? It's like, no, it's an interview. And I think
everything I've ever said before is a lie, and now is true.
Right. And I get
name.
and I get that in the wrestling world, there was a time where people were in character forever. And the shoot interview was them going, all right, you were listening to Dolph Ziggler all these years. Now you're listening to Nick Nemeth. So I get that. but I just want to have a conversation with people, and whatever comes out, comes out. I never usually have an agenda. If there's a big enough topic, sure, I want to talk about it, but I never go in like, oh man, I am going to get this person with this question.
Every now and then, do you have a publicist feed you that, be honest here, where they go, ask whatever you want, but cue them up with this question? Because I've gotten that before.
I've had, it's pretty rare now, but I've had that, and it's usually just for like the greater good of both my interview and the promotion of, whatever they're doing. Like, hey, talk about whatever you want, but can you make sure to talk about this? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about that thing anyway, but yes, just so you know, we will talk about that thing.
Oh, I was meaning more the sense of, do whatever you want, but cue them up with this question so that they can then act surprised as then give you the exclusive. You haven't had that?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
I'm also very fortunate recently that most of my interviews are going directly with that person. So very rarely is it like talking to the publicist and then, on the day of the person, I get to talk to the person for the first time. That's pretty rare. But yeah, no, I haven't had someone be like, we're going to give you this piece of information. So like the secret word is this.
I've had that and it was bizarre.
What was it?
Let's just say the interview may have made an impact about the person and what they were doing outside of the ring. Or they're like, act a little surprised, just feed them this kind of question and see where it is.
Okay.
You can't post it before this time. Oh, an embargo. Okay, cool.
Wow. Yeah, embargoes don't exist very often here in the wrestling interview world, do they?
Certain companies that make an impact do, but I'm finding. I had an AEW one a week ago where a person may or may not have been wearing a neck brace during the interview, and I was told when to run it, not to pull the curtain back too much, but. Hey, if you're blessed to not have to do that, good for you, Chris.
Not yet. I mean, now that we've said it, I'm sure it's going to happen every single time now.
Exactly. Well, 2 quick questions, if you don't mind, because you've been so generous with your time.
Oh, no, thank you. You've been generous with your time as well. I thank you for sharing yours with me.
It's all you. Your fishing company, what is it called?
Oh my gosh, I just happen to be wearing the shirt. It's called Woo Tungsten. So like I said earlier, when I'm passionate about something, I dive all the way into it. So, wow, I got so excited I've hit my desk here. So I'm a big bass fisherman, and I have been almost my entire life, fishing in bass tournaments, just generally being obsessed with catching largemouth and smallmouth bass. So my bass fishing partner and my tournament fishing partner, we were looking for these tungsten fishing weights, which for someone who doesn't fish, it's the thing that helps sink your bait down to the bottom. So if you're fishing with a plastic worm or plastic crayfish, it will likely float unless you put something in it or on it that will sink it down to the bottom. Lead was used for many, many years. It's not great for the environment. So tungsten is the replacement. So we were looking to just try to find some tungsten weights, and instead stumbled upon this idea of like, I think we could start a company. So that was 4 years ago. And now it's grown to be one of the largest tungsten weight companies in the world. So it's really cool to be able to have my hand in that passion, have my hand in the wrestling. And I think the moral of this story is if you're passionate about something, whatever niche it is that you like dive into that. If I can get by with my passion for pro wrestling, which as we talked about is hyper niche, and bass fishing might even be more niche, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you're into, follow that.
You just answered the second question I had, which was any last words for the kids. So I'll just ask this instead. The bass fisherman world, of course, is super niche, but the people within it know each other. Have you ever considered interviewing Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden, who just wrote a memoir about fishing?
Wow, I didn't even think about that. It needs to be bass fishing, though, because if he wants to talk about bluefin tuna, I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
I think it's bass fishing, and I think Jericho may have had him on the podcast to talk about it. If not, You got the exclusive right there.
Wow. Well, I mean, it would be the nerdiest podcast ever that no one would ever listen to. Just me and him talking about like drop shotting and flipping and pitching. And let's see what other like bass fishing terms I can throw out here to confuse everyone. Fishing with fluorocarbon line on your extra soft tip rod.
I can't top that. I can't
Yeah.
top that. Chris, we're going to go out on a high note here. Again, thank you so much. The work you do matters to so many people. So keep doing it. You're inspiring, and don't change the name of the show. Don't do
Well,
it.
thank you. And Darren, thank you for what you do. Thank you for sharing your time with me. And thank you for having great research questions, and keep doing what you're doing. Don't change the name of your show.
The Paltrocast with Darren Paltrowitz has not been canceled yet. So
There you go.
thanks to Chris, that is the case. Well, keep up the greatness on all ends, as said, and have a great rest of the day, man.
Thank you. You too, Darren. Thank you.